Let's clear something up, because it's one of the most dangerous lies we've been taught. If you're just kind enough, they'll change. We've heard it all before, haven't we? Be patient. Be forgiving. Be the bigger person. And maybe, just maybe, they'll finally treat you right. But what if the very things that make you compassionate are the same things a narcissist uses against you? Here's the truth. Most people won't say out loud. Narcissists don't misunderstand kindness. They exploit it. Your empathy. They see it as weakness. Your patience, an opportunity to delay accountability. Your forgiveness, a reset button they press every time they cross the line, so they can do it again. And every time you drop a boundary just to keep the peace, you don't calm the storm. You feed it. Because to them, kindness isn't a bridge to connection. It's a door left unlocked. A door they'll keep walking through until you finally realize being nice doesn't protect you from being used. Now, this doesn't mean kindness is wrong, or that you should become bitter, cold, or closed off. Stoicism doesn't call for that, but it does call for discernment. The Stoics didn't believe in becoming passive in the face of harm. They believed in principled refusal, the quiet, powerful strength to say, "This isn't aligned with my values and I won't allow it in my space." Marcus Aurelius didn't say, "Let everyone walk over you." He said, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do. That's real peace. Not the fake kind built on silence and self-erasure." So let me ask you this. How many times have you excused someone's behavior in the name of empathy, only to feel smaller each time you did? How many times have you told yourself, "If I just explain better, maybe they'll understand"? And how many times did they twist your words, flip the narrative, or make you feel like you were the one overreacting? Here's what you need to hear today. Kindness without boundaries becomes self-betrayal. And your role in this life is not to teach grown adults how to treat you by shrinking yourself smaller and smaller until you finally disappear. Your role is to live by your principles, even if that means walking away. Even if it means being misunderstood. Even if it means choosing solitude over chaos disguised as love. The Stoics weren't cold. They were clear. They knew that real strength wasn't found in how much pain you can tolerate, but in how calmly you can walk away from what insults your soul. So no, kindness isn't the cure. Not when it's used to bypass accountability. Not when it becomes the reason you stay in cycles that break you. Not when it's the tool someone else uses to chip away at your sense of self. Kindness matters, but only when it's paired with self-respect, with firmness, with the ability to say, "I wish you well, but I won't lose myself trying to fix you." This video isn't about turning cold or closing your heart. It's about learning the Stoic art of emotional clarity, where your peace is sacred, your energy is limited, and your boundaries are non-negotiable. Because the most powerful thing you can do isn't yell, argue, or convince them. It's to stop participating in the game altogether. Let them wonder where you went. Let them sit with the silence your absence creates. Because when you finally stop proving your worth to people who only see you as supply, you get to come home. To yourself. So let's start there. Let's stop confusing compassion with permission. And let's reclaim what kindness was always meant to be. A reflection of your strength, not a doorway to your destruction. Let's talk about something that's hard to admit, especially for people with good hearts. Sometimes, the more kindness you give, the more they take. You offer understanding. They offer excuses. You forgive. They reset. And just when you think things might finally change, they flip back into the same old patterns of control, blame, and emotional chaos. Sound familiar? That's because narcissists don't see your kindness as a bridge. They see it as a loophole. They don't use apologies as a turning point. They use them as a reset button. I'm sorry. I was just stressed. It won't happen again. I didn't mean it like that. And for a moment, you feel hope. You feel relief. You think maybe, just maybe, they finally see the damage they've done. But then comes the next time. And the time after that. And before you know it, you're living in a loop. A loop where kindness doesn't heal, it enables. But here's the Stoic truth that changed the game for me. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius. Now, a lot of people misread that. They think it means stay quiet, take the pain, be noble about it. No, that's not Stoicism. That's self-abandonment. What Marcus meant wasn't to endure abuse. He meant to rise above the tactics of those who try to pull you into their storm. You don't fight manipulation by becoming manipulative. You don't meet cruelty with cruelty. But you also don't keep handing out grace to someone who only uses it to reload their weapons. Because Stoicism isn't about suppressing your pain. It's about reclaiming your peace, intentionally, calmly, and without permission. So the next time someone uses an apology like a free pass, ask yourself, what has actually changed? Not what they said. What they showed. Are their actions evolving? Or are their apologies just well rehearsed? Because forgiveness without accountability isn't strength. It's surrender, and you weren't born to be drained. You weren't made to be someone's emotional reset point. You are not a soft place for a hard person to land and reload. So what's the Stoic move? You don't retaliate. You recenter. You stop over-explaining. You stop defending your kindness. And you start protecting your peace like it's sacred, because it is. You don't have to become cold to stop being used. You just have to be clear. That's the real power of Stoicism. Staying calm. Not because you're numb, but because you've decided your energy is too valuable to be wasted on someone who only sees your compassion as a strategy to exploit. Let's get one thing straight. You are not the fixer. You are not the therapist. You are not the emotional sponge. You are not the savior of someone who has no intention of saving themselves. But when you have a big heart, when you're naturally empathetic, it's easy to fall into that role. They tell you they're trying. They blame their past. They tell you they didn't mean to hurt you. And before you know it, you're spending every ounce of energy trying to heal someone who keeps cutting you open. But let me be very clear about something. If someone keeps hurting you after you've shown them kindness, clarity, and compassion, they're not confused. They're committed. They know exactly what they're doing. They just know you'll clean it up. They just know you'll blame yourself. They just know you'll stay. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that love means enduring. That being a good person means never giving up on someone. That your worth is measured by how much pain you can carry for others. But that's not love. That's not strength. That's self-destruction disguised as virtue. Marcus Aurelius, Stoic emperor and philosopher, put it perfectly. Be the gatekeeper of your soul. Not the open door, not the doormat. Not the rescue squad for every emotionally unavailable person who claims they just need time. Being the gatekeeper means protecting your peace like your life depends on it, because it does. You don't need to carry their chaos just because you're capable. You don't need to bleed just to prove you care. And you definitely don't need to keep showing up for someone who enjoys watching you fall apart. Because here's the thing. No one says out loud. Some people don't want healing. They want control. They want power. They want your kindness as currency. Something they can spend when they want attention, and throw away when they don't. You are not here to fix what they refuse to face. You are here to protect your energy, to hold your standards, to be the kind of person who leads with love, but not at the expense of your sanity. So, if you've been bending over backwards, walking on eggshells, and setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, pause. Ask yourself, am I healing this person or enabling their harm? You are not cold for walking away. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not giving up when you decide that someone's pain is not your responsibility to carry. You are simply stepping into the kind of strength that doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't prove. It protects. Because in the end, the person you're meant to save is yourself. Let's stop giving narcissists more credit than they deserve. They're not misunderstood. They're not broken people trying to heal. And they're not waking up wondering how to become better partners, friends, or family members. They're waking up thinking about one thing: control. That's it, not connection, not love. Not growth, control. And here's the brutal truth most people avoid saying. In a narcissist's mind, empathy is weakness. Kindness is leverage. And your feelings? They're just obstacles to manage, not something they care to understand. You might be thinking, surely they must know they're hurting me. They do. They just don't care in the way you want them to. Because narcissists don't think in terms of mutual respect. They don't build relationships to connect. They build them to dominate. Think about it like a system, where every interaction is calculated. Every compliment is bait. Every apology is a pause, not a change. Every argument is a test of how much control they still have over you. It's not about closeness. It's about keeping you close enough to use, but never free enough to breathe. And here's the mistake so many kind-hearted people make. We keep trying to relate to them as if they think like us. We believe if we just show enough love, enough patience, enough vulnerability, they'll soften. They'll finally see us. They'll finally stop hurting us. But Stoic wisdom teaches something very different. The philosopher Epictetus reminded us, when someone shows you what disturbs them, they're showing you their values. Narcissists value power, so they're not disturbed by hurting you. They're disturbed by the moment you stop reacting. They panic when you go quiet, when you stop arguing, when you start detaching. Because in their mind, control is connection. So when you take that power away, even silently, you become a threat. So what's the takeaway? Stop trying to rewrite their programming. Start protecting your own. You can't force someone to value what they don't even recognize. You can't teach empathy to someone who sees it as a flaw, and you can't build a healthy relationship with someone who sees you as a resource, not a human being. You're not cold for stepping away. You're not cruel for setting boundaries, and you're not heartless for realizing that this is not love. It's a system of emotional domination. You didn't lose a connection. You escaped control. That's not weakness, that's clarity. And the Stoic path isn't about changing people. It's about changing your response to them. Because once you stop trying to earn love from someone who only values power, you finally return to your own. If you've ever been in a relationship that felt like a roller coaster, where one minute you're on top of the world and the next you don't even recognize yourself, you may have been pulled into a narcissist's cycle. And make no mistake, it is a cycle. Not a relationship, not love. A pattern. One that's been played out thousands of times with different people, in different places, with the same devastating result. Let's break it down. Phase 1. Idealization. This is the hook. You're not just liked, you're adored. You're told you're the answer to their prayers. The best thing that ever happened to them. The connection feels electric, magnetic. Like you found your soulmate, but it's not real. It's love bombing, designed to disarm you, to get you attached fast. They flatter you to bypass your instincts. They move quickly, so you don't have time to see the red flags. They mirror your values, your interests, your dreams, until you believe, finally, someone sees me. But soon, that spotlight starts to dim. Phase 2, devaluation. Suddenly you can't do anything right. That thing they once praised you for, now it's too much. You're overreacting. Too emotional. Not enough. They gaslight you, criticize you, make subtle jabs that leave you second-guessing yourself. And here's the twist. Every now and then, they bring back the praise, just enough to keep you hoping the old them might return, just enough to make you think maybe it's you that's the problem. But it's not. It's the pattern. They build you up to knock you down, because the confusion keeps you hooked. Phase 3, discard or control. When they feel they've drained your energy, they either ghost you completely or tighten their grip. They might vanish and reappear. They might become distant, but refuse to let you go. They test how little they can give while still keeping your loyalty. And the cruelest part? They've trained you to chase them, to crave their approval, to believe that if you could just be better, more calm, more quiet, maybe things would go back to how they were in the beginning. But here's the truth. That beginning was never real. It was a performance. It was a setup to gain access to your trust, your energy, your soul. And Stoic wisdom teaches us, if someone can disturb your peace, they already control too much of your mind. Epictetus. The Stoic path isn't about ignoring pain. It's about seeing it clearly and choosing to walk away from patterns that disguise destruction as love. You are not broken for falling into the cycle. You are human, but you are also powerful enough to step out of it and stay out. Because once you see the pattern, you don't chase closure, you choose clarity, and clarity sets you free. Let's talk about one of the most subtle and brutal forms of manipulation: psychological warfare. It doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't shout. It doesn't even raise a hand. But it leaves you spinning, questioning your reality, and doubting your own sanity. It usually starts with something small. You bring up something that hurt you, calmly, clearly, but instead of being heard, you're told, "That's not what I said." Or worse, "You're too sensitive." You explain yourself. They twist it. You cry. They stay cold. You set a boundary. And somehow you end up apologizing for your tone. That's the game. And the rules are simple. They shift the focus from what they did to how you reacted. So now you're not confronting the betrayal anymore. You're defending your voice, your volume, your emotions. And in doing so, you've lost the original thread. You've lost your footing. And that's the point. Gaslighting isn't about proving you wrong. It's about making you unsure. Because when you doubt your memory, your feelings, your perception, you stop speaking up. You stop trusting yourself. You stop fighting back. And they don't have to silence you, because you've learned to silence yourself. But here's where Stoic wisdom becomes your sword in the dark. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your estimate of it." Now, the Stoics were not saying, just ignore the pain. What they meant was, clarity is power. When you can name the trap, you can leave the trap. When you can see the pattern, you no longer fall for it. That's the turning point. Because once you see that someone isn't engaging in a conversation, but instead in a strategy to disarm you, you stop playing. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying your reactions to someone who never had a problem with your tone until it challenged their control. And you start anchoring yourself in truth. Your truth. What you saw, what you felt, what you know deep down. So here's your reminder. If someone always makes you feel like the villain for expressing pain, if your emotions are always too much, but their disrespect is never addressed, if the conversation is always about your delivery, not their behavior, you are not in a relationship. You are in a mental war zone, and your greatest act of strength isn't fighting harder. It's walking away with your clarity intact, because the Stoic path isn't about staying silent. It's about speaking with intention and knowing when to stop speaking altogether. Not out of fear, but out of freedom. Let's talk about what it really means to reclaim your power. It doesn't always look like a dramatic exit. It doesn't always come with a final argument or a grand declaration of "I'm done." Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just stopping. Stopping the need to explain yourself. Stopping the habit of justifying your pain. Stopping the cycle of trying to make someone understand who has no intention of listening. Because here's the truth. When someone sees your empathy as a weakness, when they treat your vulnerability as a tool to control you, no amount of explaining will open their eyes. They don't lack information. They lack intention. They're not confused about how they hurt you. They're just comfortable knowing you'll keep giving them a chance to do it again. So ask yourself, how many hours have you spent trying to be clearer? How many texts, talks, breakdowns, or heartfelt messages have you poured out, hoping they would finally get it? And how many times did they spin it back on you? Your reaction became the issue. Your hurt became an inconvenience. Your truth became negotiable. But Stoicism teaches us something different, something powerful. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. That means your peace doesn't require their understanding. Your healing doesn't need their validation. And your worth isn't something they get to vote on. You don't need a green light from them to move forward. You don't need closure from someone who profits from your confusion. You just need a decision to stop playing a game where the rules are always changing. To stop handing your emotional power to someone who only sees you as a reflection of their control. To stop mistaking tolerance for love. Because love doesn't make you beg to be seen. It doesn't make you explain the same wound over and over. And it definitely doesn't turn your pain into a weapon against you. So here's the Stoic move. Detach with clarity. Not with bitterness, not with revenge. Just with the calm strength of someone who finally understands. I no longer need you to understand why I'm choosing peace. That is what reclaiming power looks like. It's walking away without slamming the door. It's letting go without needing to be right. It's choosing your well-being over the endless negotiation of your basic emotional needs. Because when someone doesn't care how they make you feel, every word you speak becomes a gift they never deserved. And when you stop giving them that power, that's not silence, that's strength. So stop explaining. Stop defending. Stop waiting. Reclaim your power. And walk away. Not to prove anything to them, but to prove everything to yourself. Here's a truth that can change everything. Narcissists don't want understanding. They want control. And the more you try to understand them, the more you give them what they're really after. Your energy, your attention, your self-doubt. Let's be honest. How many times have you sat down thinking, if I can just say it the right way, maybe they'll finally hear me? You come with clarity, with compassion, with the intent to connect. But the conversation never leads to peace. Instead, it turns into a maze. They deflect. They redirect. They minimize what you're feeling. And eventually, they accuse you. Suddenly, you're not addressing their behavior anymore. You're defending your reaction to it. You go in seeking resolution and come out questioning your own sanity. That's not miscommunication. That's strategy. Narcissists don't use conversation to grow closer. They use it to confuse, control, and condition you, because as long as you're explaining, as long as you're rephrasing, as long as you're trying to prove your intentions, you're still inside the trap, and that's exactly where they want you. But here's what the Stoics knew. Your peace begins the moment you stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need another discussion. You need self-respect. Radical, unapologetic, unshakable self-respect. The kind that says, I don't owe you a debate about my worth. I don't need to prove my pain is real. I refuse to keep engaging with someone who twists every truth into a weapon. Marcus Aurelius said, never argue with someone whose aim is not truth, but victory. And that's the key. You cannot win with someone who's not playing fair. You cannot heal in a space designed to confuse you. And you cannot find peace while tethered to someone who only feels powerful when you feel lost. So here's the escape. Radical self-respect and total disengagement. Not silence born from fear, but silence born from clarity. You walk away, not because you've run out of things to say, but because you finally realize they were never listening, and you no longer need to be heard to be whole. That's your power. You don't need closure. You don't need their validation. You don't even need them to understand why you're leaving. You just need to trust that your soul was never meant to live in a place where truth is twisted and kindness is used against you. So if the conversation always feels like war, if your words are used to trap you instead of free you, it's time to stop explaining. You are not walking away from love. You are walking toward yourself. And that's the most stoic thing you can do. Let's talk about one of the hardest truths you'll ever have to accept. You don't need closure. You need clarity. And the two are not the same. You see, most of us spend way too long trying to find the right words, the perfect timing, the ideal explanation that will finally make the other person understand why we're hurt, why we're walking away, why it all mattered. But what if I told you? It was never about finding better words. It was about building stronger boundaries. Because here's the thing, no one tells you. Some people will never give you closure, not because they can't, but because they won't. They know you're looking for answers. They know you're craving that final moment of honesty. And they withhold it, not by accident, but by design. Because if they can keep you hoping, they can keep you hooked. So you replay conversations in your head. You write messages you'll never send. You tell yourself, if I could just say it the right way, maybe then. But closure is not something someone else gives you. It's something you decide for yourself the moment you stop waiting. And this is where Stoicism gives us a different kind of strength. Marcus Aurelius taught, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do. In other words, Stoic silence isn't weakness. It's not passivity. It's a refusal to feed chaos with your energy. It's the moment you stop needing to be understood by someone who was never committed to understanding you. It's not that you don't have more to say. It's that you finally realize you don't owe it to them. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself rest. You owe yourself the freedom to move forward without needing someone else to bless the decision. So if you've been waiting for an apology that's never coming, if you've been stuck in the loop of over-explaining, overthinking, and overgiving, this is your reminder. You don't need their closure. You need your clarity. You need to see the pattern, see your value, and see that walking away without the last word doesn't mean you lost the battle. It means you finally ended the war. And trust me, there is nothing more powerful than the quiet moment when you stop reaching for resolution and start reaching for yourself. So breathe deep. Cut the cord. Close the chapter. Not because you got every answer, but because you finally remembered you were never the question. There's one thing narcissists can't handle. It's not confrontation, it's not exposure, it's not even boundaries. It's your calm detachment. See, narcissists thrive on chaos. They feed off your reaction. The moment you raise your voice, defend yourself, explain yourself, or try to make them see the damage, they've already won. Because now you're in the arena with them. Now you're fighting their fire with more fire. But the Stoics taught us a different way. Not to fight harder, but to step back. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's the essence of Stoic power. You don't need to yell. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to perform your growth, wear your healing like armor, or get loud about your peace. You just need to embody it. Because the moment you stop reacting, stop trying to be understood by someone who isn't listening, stop needing to win, you reclaim your power. Think about it. What shakes a narcissist more than losing control? What rattles them more than someone who sees their games and doesn't play? It's not rage that scares them. It's silence. Stillness, disinterest. Because in their world, emotional energy, any energy, is currency. And when you stop spending it on them, when you stop showing up to defend your truth and instead just live it, they lose access to what they truly wanted, your attention. That's the Stoic path, not passive. Not avoidant, but disciplined. When they provoke, stay still. When they twist words, don't untangle. When they bait you into chaos, refuse to dance. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about choosing your response with intention, not impulse. It's about understanding that real strength doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be consistent. So the next time a narcissist tries to pull you into their emotional storm, ask yourself, do I want to win this argument or win my peace? Because every moment you stay calm in the face of provocation, every time you choose to walk away rather than engage, you remind them, and more importantly yourself, that your power is internal. And no one gets to shake that without your permission. So don't fight their fire. Don't explain your growth. Don't react to their chaos. Be the mountain, unmoved, focused, unreachable to drama. That's the Stoic way, and it's the most powerful response to manipulation there is. Let's talk about boundaries. Not the kind you write in a journal, not the kind you text at 2 a.m. after another emotional blow-up, not the kind you say with your voice shaking, hoping they'll finally listen. Let's talk about real boundaries, the kind that don't just sound strong, they mean something. Because here's the hard truth, requests get ignored, but consequences get respected. You can say, please don't raise your voice at me, or I really need space when I'm overwhelmed. And sure, you might say it kindly. You might repeat it. You might even explain why. But if nothing happens when they cross that line, that boundary was just a performance. And narcissists, they love performances because they don't listen to your words. They watch your actions. That's why your boundaries must be more than declarations. They must be decisions. Let me break it down. 1. Draw a clear line, not vague, not emotional, not conditional. Something like, if you yell at me, I will leave the room. If you disrespect me in public, I will end the conversation. Not a threat, just a fact. 2. No arguments, no justifications. You don't explain your boundary to someone who knows exactly why it's needed. You don't try to convince them that your pain is valid. You don't debate your dignity. As Epictetus taught, never explain your philosophy. Embody it. Let your actions speak louder than your words. 3. Enforce it immediately, not next time. Not after they do it again. Now, if the line is crossed, move. Stand up, exit the room, block the number. End the dinner. Not because you want to punish, but because you want to protect. Because the moment you say, "Don't do that," and they do, and you stay, you've just taught them your boundaries are optional. And once they believe that, they'll push further, louder, deeper, until your lines blur into silence. But you are not here to manage someone else's chaos. You are here to master your own peace. That's the Stoic way, not through rage, not through control, but through firm, calm action. You don't need to yell to be clear. You don't need to argue to be right. You just need to mean what you say and follow through. So remember this: a boundary without consequence is just a wish. A boundary enforced, that's power, that's self-respect. That's peace in action, and no one, no matter how close, how charming, or how wounded, gets to take that from you. Here's something most people don't tell you. When you finally pull away from a narcissist, they panic. Not because they miss you, not because they suddenly realized your worth, but because they're losing control. And they'll do whatever it takes to get it back. They'll love bomb you, suddenly texting, calling, sending sweet messages like it's day one again. They'll guilt trip you. After everything we've been through, you're really walking away? They might even offer a fake apology, something vague like, "I know I've made mistakes," hoping it's just enough to reel you back in. But make no mistake, this isn't love. This is strategy. It's not about repairing the relationship. It's about regaining their seat at the control panel. Because here's what they really fear: your silence, your distance, your clarity. When you stop engaging, stop explaining, stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And narcissists hate unpredictability because it means you're no longer playing by their rules. This is where the Stoic path becomes your greatest strength. You don't need to yell. You don't need to block out of spite. You don't need to write a dramatic goodbye. You simply detach, gracefully, calmly, quietly. As Epictetus might advise, let your silence be the locked door, not as punishment, but as protection. Because you finally recognize the pattern, and you've chosen not to participate. Let them knock. Let them flood your inbox. Let them wonder where you went. You don't need to respond. You don't need to defend your choice. You don't owe them closure, reaction, or access. You owe yourself peace. And when you finally stop feeding their chaos with your attention, you take your power back without ever raising your voice. So if you're wondering why they suddenly care when you've stepped away, it's not because they've changed, it's because you have. And that's what terrifies them most. There comes a moment in healing when you realize your greatest power is not in how well you can argue, explain, or fight back. It's in how well you can rise above. Not out of ego, not because you're better, but because you finally understand something vital. You don't need to wrestle in the mud to prove your strength. Because even if you win, you're still covered in the mess. You don't need to respond to every provocation. You don't need to educate someone who thrives in chaos. And you definitely don't need to waste your peace trying to earn validation from someone committed to misunderstanding you. The real power? The true shift. It happens when you stop reacting and start mastering yourself. That's when everything changes. Because at that point, you no longer see chaos as something to fix. You see it as something to exit. You no longer explain your boundaries. You enforce them, not with rage, not with noise, but with quiet, unshakable consistency. Every time you say no and mean it. Every time you walk away without the need for a dramatic exit. Every time you choose silence over a pointless battle, you lay another brick in the fortress of your emotional freedom. That's what Stoicism teaches. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not about suppression. It's about selection. Choosing what you give your energy to. Choosing who you allow into your peace. Choosing when to speak and when to walk away. Because your peace is not just a luxury, it is your greatest asset. And you protect it not with walls made of anger, but with boundaries built from clarity. So let others spiral. Let them try to pull you into games, guilt trips, emotional storms. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to prove your growth. You live it. And the more you lean into that calm, quiet power, the more they'll feel the shift. They won't understand it. They won't like it. Because suddenly you're no longer feeding the dynamic. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer available for chaos. You've moved from reaction to self-possession. So if you've been wondering when the power shifts, it shifts when you stop chasing it from others and start cultivating it within. That's self-mastery. That's the Stoic way. And that's the kind of strength no manipulator can touch. There's a moment in your healing where everything gets quiet, not because there's nothing left to say, but because you finally realize you don't have to say it. You don't have to prove how much you've grown. You don't have to convince anyone that you were right, or that you were hurt, or that you deserved better. You just walk away, with your dignity intact. That's real healing. Because narcissists don't fear your anger. They don't flinch when you cry, or beg, or try to make them understand. They only start to panic when they see something they can't control. Your unshakable calm. That's when the game falls apart. Because as long as you're reacting, they still have access. Access to your energy. Access to your mind. Access to your heart. But the moment you stop explaining, stop defending, stop responding, they lose the one thing they never expected, your silence. And that silence isn't empty, it's powerful. It's filled with every decision you made to put yourself first, every step you took to rebuild your boundaries, every ounce of clarity you earned through the storm. You don't need revenge, you don't need the last word, you don't even need closure. Because the peace you carry now, that's the closure. It's the moment you stop performing your pain. You stop carrying the weight of proving your worth. You stop trying to rewrite someone else's opinion of you. You simply rise, without noise, without drama, without seeking validation from the very person who tried to break you. That's the Stoic path. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best answer to anger is silence. Not silence rooted in fear or defeat, but silence born from knowing. Knowing that your peace is too valuable to be spent on people who trade in chaos. Knowing that your time, your energy, your heart deserve to be met, not managed. And when you truly understand that, you don't just leave them. You leave behind the version of you that needed them. So, if you've reached the point where you're no longer triggered, no longer chasing, no longer reacting, that's not weakness. That's mastery. That's growth. That's what rising looks like. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's steady. And the ones who tried to keep you small, they'll feel it. Not through your words, but through your absence. So go quietly, but go completely. Because rising without noise is the loudest statement you'll ever make. There comes a moment in your healing when you stop asking, why did they treat me like that? And you start asking, why did I keep giving them the power to? That moment is the beginning of your liberation. Not through blame, not through bitterness, but through something far deeper, more ancient, logos. In Stoic philosophy, logos means your inner reason, your divine clarity, your higher self, the part of you that sees through the noise and chaos and remembers. You are not here to be consumed by someone else's confusion. See, when you're caught in the cycle with a narcissist, you start pouring all your energy into trying to fix them. You explain, you forgive, you sacrifice. And they keep taking, not because they're broken, but because you keep offering more. But here's the truth that might sting a little. You cannot heal someone who refuses to meet themselves. And the more you try, the more you abandon yourself. That's why the Stoics taught us to stop looking outward for freedom and start returning to logos. Because logos reminds you that peace isn't earned through someone else's approval. It's created when you return to your core. You don't need their apology to move forward. You don't need them to finally get it, to feel whole again. You don't even need justice. You just need to stop giving power to someone who doesn't even know how to love themselves. Because when someone is disconnected from their own soul, they will only pull you further from yours. So instead of asking, how do I make them see me? Ask, how do I begin to see myself again? That's where the shift happens. That's where the fog clears. That's where you stop trying to fix them and start rebuilding you. You start investing in your routines, your peace, your voice. You take your mornings back, your thoughts back, your joy back. You show up for yourself, daily, quietly, with devotion. Because true healing isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. It just needs consistency. And over time, you stop obsessing over how they feel. You stop analyzing their every move. You stop waiting for that breakthrough that never comes. Why? Because you've returned to reason. You've chosen to lead with clarity, not confusion. With calm, not chaos. With purpose, not pain. That's logos. That's freedom. That's the quiet, unshakable power of someone who no longer gives their soul away in pieces. So if you're still in the storm, still doubting yourself, still waiting for them to wake up, this is your reminder. You don't need to fix them. You just need to free yourself, and you do that by coming back to the one place they can't touch, your reason, your inner code. Your logos. Let that be your guide now. There's a moment, quiet but undeniable, when you realize you don't owe kindness to cruelty. Not anymore, not ever again. It doesn't make you bitter. It makes you awake. For so long you were told to take the high road, to be the bigger person, to show grace, even in the face of blatant disrespect. But Stoicism teaches us something far more powerful. You are not obligated to offer what's sacred to those who trample it. Kindness is not a currency, it is a gift. And gifts are not owed to those who only show up to manipulate, diminish, or destroy. Here's the truth most people avoid. You don't need to explain yourself to chaos. You don't need to justify your pain. You don't need to keep playing referee in a game where you're the only one following the rules. Emotional freedom is the final win. And it doesn't come from proving them wrong or getting the last word. It comes when you stop showing up for battles that rob your peace. When you walk away, not because you're weak, but because you're done bleeding for people who celebrate your wounds. You see, real healing isn't loud. It's not a post. It's not a speech. It's not a scene. It's a quiet decision to protect your soul like it's gold, because it is. And maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you still want the apology, the accountability, the closure. But what if I told you? Closure is something you give yourself when you decide to stop reopening what was never yours to carry in the first place. You don't rise to spite them. You don't rise to make them watch. You rise because your healing demands it, not to prove you are good, but to remember you still are. not to prove you deserved better, but to finally give yourself better. Because there is no prize in being endlessly patient with cruelty. There is no award for enduring dysfunction with a smile. The real prize is peace. Peace that doesn't beg for understanding, peace that doesn't wait for change, peace that stands tall even when no one claps. And that, my friend, is what emotional freedom looks like. It's the quiet victory, the kind that doesn't need to be seen, only lived. Let's be clear, this isn't about hate. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong or hoping they finally get it. No. This is about clarity. This is about discipline. This is about reclaiming your freedom. Because for too long, they made you play a role. The peacekeeper, the over-explainer, the one who stays silent to keep the storm from coming. But what if I told you? You were never meant to play small to be safe. You weren't born to shrink so others can shine. You were meant to rise. You see, the moment you stop playing the role they wrote for you is the moment you begin to write your own story. You stop performing and start becoming. And yes, it will confuse them. Yes, they might call it selfish, cold, or dramatic, but that's not your concern anymore. Because growth, real growth, isn't something you perform. It's something you embody. Epictetus said it plainly. No man is free who is not master of himself. And that's the Stoic truth we come home to. Freedom isn't handed to you. It's built through boundaries, clarity, and radical self-respect. So no, don't wait for their apology. Don't wait for them to treat you right. Don't wait for them to change. You are the one who changes. You change the rules. You change the tone. You change the entire energy of your life by choosing yourself. Because your dignity isn't up for negotiation, your peace is not a bargaining chip, and your future no longer belongs to those who tried to break you. Let them sit in confusion. Let them wonder why you stopped responding, stopped explaining, stopped shrinking. It's not bitterness. It's not revenge. It's liberation. You walked through their chaos, and you didn't just survive. You transformed, and now you don't owe anyone a performance. You owe yourself peace. You owe yourself purpose. You owe yourself the freedom to live as you were always meant to. Calm. Grounded. Unshakably you. So walk forward. Not louder, but wiser. Not heavier, but freer. This is your rising. Own it in silence, build it with discipline, and never, ever hand the pen of your life to someone who tried to erase you. You were never too much. You were just too awake for people still asleep. If this message woke something up in you, don't let it fade. Like this video to mark your turning point. Subscribe if you're done playing small and ready to rise, calm, clear, and free. And share this with someone who's still living in the role they were cast in, not the life they were born to live. You don't need to explain yourself anymore. You don't need their permission to grow. You just need the courage to walk away from the noise and the discipline to never look back. Thank you for watching. Stay grounded, stay awake. And as always, protect your peace, protect your power, and walk your path with quiet strength.